Welcome to Decision 2018, a democratic gubernatorial forum presented by WTJX Channel 12 and the Virgin Islands Consortium. I'm your host, Ernice Gilbert. There are three democratic teams running for governor and lieutenant governor of the Virgin Islands: Angel Dawson and Maurice James, Albert Bryan and Tregenzo Roach, and Alison Petros and Samuel Sanis. In tonight's 2-hour forum, you will learn more about the candidates and where they stand on key issues facing our territory, such as education, healthcare, and the solvency of the government employees' retirement system. But first, the ground rules. The program will be broken into two parts: a lieutenant governor candidate forum, followed by a candidate for governor forum, and after introductory statements, I'll ask the same question of each candidate and allow 90 seconds for a response. I'll ask follow-up questions if necessary and allow the candidates 30 seconds to respond. We have in-studio cues to remind candidates when they have 30 seconds and 15 seconds of response time. This cue will signal to the candidate that time is up and I must move on to the next candidate. This is not a debate. It's a balanced, non-biased platform that allows you, the viewer, to better understand each candidate's views to help you make a more informed decision come August 4th. So let's begin with each of our lieutenant governor candidates: Maurice James, Tregenzo Roach, and Samuel Sanis. Sitting in the order as listed on the ballot. Attorney James, you have 90 seconds to introduce yourself.
Good evening, everyone. I am Maurice James, and I am really happy to be back in the studios of WTJX. I would like to thank WTJX and the VI Consortium for giving me this opportunity to convince you, the voters, why Angel and I should be your next governor and lieutenant governor. In February of this year, I ended my military career at the Virgin Islands National Guard, where I served as the staff judge advocate, or in civilian terms, the legal counsel for the Guard. My legal career began in 1986 when I worked as an associate with the law offices of Winston E. Hodge. I must also mention that during my military career, I deployed to Guantanamo Bay, Cuba for 1 year. I have also served and provided legal services in the private, public, and nonprofit sectors. I am married to Anthony Paul for 30 years. He's from the island of Trinidad and Tobago. I have 3 grown children who I homeschooled. I was a teacher. I am a certified family law mediator. I believe that every day, if you work hard, tomorrow is going to be better. That's why with Angel, Dawson, and I, we believe that if we work hard and we believe in a better tomorrow, we will in fact have a better Virgin Islands. On August 4th, vote number 1.
All right.
Thank you.
Senator?
Good evening, everyone. My name is Tregenzo Roach, and I join Albert Bryan in the team of Bryan Roach. I thank WTJX. I was here at your budget hearing this morning, and the losses that you suffered, we observed them, and thank you for keeping with the community. I am grateful for this opportunity and believe that by the end of it, the viewers will be convinced that because of the length and the breadth of the experience brought by this team in both the public and private sectors, that we are the best team to lead the Virgin Islands at this time. I'm a third-term senator in the legislature of the Virgin Islands. I think my performance in the legislature has distinguished me as a leader in the legislature, whether it comes to my legislation on land taxes or geared to control weapons coming into the territory. But I had a life before the legislature. I have served with distinction in both the executive, the legislative, and the judicial branch, having worked at the territorial court and having served in private practice in the areas specifically related to the office of the lieutenant governor. I look forward to this discussion. I look forward to sharing my opinions on other issues that we will discuss. And I believe that you will be convinced that my distinguished service in the legislature, coupled with the breadth of the experience in the private sector, where I also worked as a journalist, and leading the Board of Education, will support this bid. Thank you so very much.
Thank you, sir. Senator Sanis?
Thank you, sir. First of all, I want to say good evening and thank you, WTJX and the VI Consortium, for allowing this to occur. it is extremely honored to be here and talking to the people of the Virgin Islands. I am Samuel Sanes, a 5-term senator representing the District of St. Croix, and I'm running with Mr. Ali Petras for the, of course, position of Governor and Lieutenant Governor. To me, it is really an honor to be here because we have the opportunity to tell the people of the Virgin Islands what we can do for them. And before I begin, I also have to say that I'm a proud veteran, and I want to thank Ms. James for her service. In continuation, Ali and I bring to the table experience, both in the public and in the private sector. Once again, we are veterans. Ali has done many great things in the community. He is active in terms of community service, as well as I am. My years in the legislation have produced many efficient and effective pieces of legislation that have helped better the people of the Virgin Islands, that have increased the welfare of the people of the Virgin Islands. I'm extremely proud to be running with Ali Petras. The team itself is a team comprised of over 16 years experience when it comes to legislation. Also, too, we have both, once again, worked in the private sector. And most important of all, we are family men. Ali has 2 daughters, I got 2 daughters, and we're very much involved in community service. So once again, I'm extremely proud, and thank you for your time.
All right, thank you all for your introductory remarks. I'm going to start with Attorney James for the questions, and we'll start from the other end coming forward. Attorney James, what would be your leadership style if you were to be placed in a position to lead the territory for the remainder of a term? And let's say something happened to the governor, fell ill, or probably passed, or committed a crime so heinous that he or she had to be removed. What would be your leadership style?
Thank you for that question, Mr. Gilbert. One of the things that I strongly believe in is that I am a leader with a passion for people. And I understand that I must motivate them to do the things that they need to do. For example, as the governor, like you're saying, if I had to assume that position, I would lead by motivating people to do the things that they do, by creating the environment that allows them to exercise their own creativity. And also, I have noticed that in government, people are fearful of doing the wrong thing. We have to be able as a leader to allow people to exercise their own judgment, because then that reduces bureaucracy. I also had the opportunity to graduate from the Command and General Staff College, where as military members, the focus is on leading soldiers in executing. That's another problem that I have witnessed in the last year, that number one, you have a plan, but you have to execute it. And you have to make sure that everyone knows their lane and what they're supposed to do. So compassion, caring, concern, competence, and above all else, character is what I bring to the government as a leader. Thank you.
Thank you, Attorney. Senator Roach?
Well, I would start out by saying that I really believe in the concept of servant leadership. I believe when people arrive in political positions, it brings out an almost dark side where there's a tendency to believe that you're the leader, that you know everything and you bring everything to bear in a particular situation. I believe that every single person in an establishment, whether they be the person who takes out the trash or the person who makes key decision, I believe that every person brings wisdom to the situation. And I think when we cultivate a system that relies on the wisdom of each person, that ensures them that they have a role to play in the betterment of an organization, that they are vested in it. And when we provide them the opportunities to train and to develop and to themselves reach their best potential, that's the kind of organization I think that benefits all of the people. And I think it's very, very important to empower people through that avenue, to make them aware of their power within an organization, and that the organization, a government, a business, is really only as strong as its weakest link. And I think to cultivate that style of leadership and to bring it to bear on an organization would bring the best results for all of us.
Thank you, Senator. Senator Ernice, same question.
Thank you very much. Throughout my career, both in the private and the public sector, I've either been a supervisor or a manager of different types of entities. And one of the most important things about being a leader is to be able to relate to the individuals that are around you. You must be able to talk to the individuals. You must be able to listen. It's very important as a leader to listen. You're only as good as the people that surrounds you. So as a leader, I must be able to establish a relationship with everybody and be able to not only lead, but at the same time to listen. Oftentimes we hear people talk, but we don't really understand what they're trying to tell us. So once again, as a leader, you must be able to understand, sit down, and share ideas and concepts. It is very important now, due to the fact that we are in times of peril. We are in times in which strong leadership must occur. So once again, it must be someone as a leader to listen to the people of the Virgin Islands. It must be someone that understands what is going on in terms of either the private sector and the public sector. So that's my style for leadership. I really want to communicate with the individuals. I want to communicate with all the different positions that they are available and come together as one and make the best decision for all, not just the best decision for a few. Thank you.
All right, thank you guys. Very good answers. The next question. We've always heard through the grapevine, but never really known to be true that candidates for lieutenant governor usually get large sums of money as part of the decision to take that position. But what I've heard from the three of you, I was at each of the announcements, were passionate arguments as to why you're doing this. Some spoke of your children, seeing a territory that is in decline and want to see it move forward. So I suppose the question here, was money part of the equation that you made when it came to the point of taking that position of lieutenant governor? Senator Roach, go ahead.
Absolutely not. I think in law we have a thing called a slippery slope. And where you begin, if you begin in the wrong place on that slope, that's it for you. I really think it's unfortunate that there should be an idea that people should need to be paid to assume positions of leadership in the government of the Virgin Islands. I have heard the same rumor, but it is absolutely not the case for me. I come from people who worked in the cane fields of St. Kitts, who left cane fields to go home to raise their children. And what they had was their name and their reputations and their character. And I inherited that. And I'm pleased that I inherited that. And that means more to me than any sum of money could possibly bring. And whenever I'm through with public service, I want to walk in the streets of the Virgin Islands, whether it be in St. Thomas, St. Croix, or St. John, and to hold my head high, to know that I have done everything within my capabilities to serve this community and to make it a better place. And whatever I can do to bring about a better environment for us, that's my pledge.
Senator Ernice, was money part of the equation for you?
No, absolutely no. It is even distasteful to even think that people will consider us to be for sale. We are not for sale. I am not for sale. I came to this decision to run with Ali Petros because of my desire to make this a better place, not just for me, but for my two beautiful young daughters, for our younger generation. And that's what we're here for. It's all about leadership. And with leadership comes great responsibilities. So to answer the question once again, no. I grew up poor, but at the same time, I grew up in a very proud household in which the name Camilo Sanes Pelado means a lot to me. I will never, never tarnish my family name. As my counterpart stated, once I leave public office, I want to be able to walk down the road. I want to be able to greet people with dignity. I want to be able to get a good night's sleep. So no, I can safely say and continue saying that this individual, Samuel Sanes, is not for sale. and he will never be for sale. It is all about working for the people of the Virgin Islands.
All right, thank you, Senator. And Attorney James?
I'm actually glad you asked that question because I actually was confronted with that when I first told a friend of mine that Angel asked me to run with him, and she said, "How much did he pay you?" And I said, "Excuse me, people get paid to run?" And I laughed about it. But it also was something that I had heard from in the 1990s, and apparently it was a practice that began then, allegedly. And I too find it despicable, disgusting. And one of the reasons for me that I was outraged about the entire thing was because as a child, I always admired Shirley Chisholm. And one of the things that she said was that she was unbought and unbossed. And so for me, that was somebody that I looked up to. And I remember a long time ago to seeing on the TV Ruby Rouse raising a check that somebody had sent to her talking about being bought. So those two women influenced me. But most of all, my grandmother influenced me because as a child, when we needed money in the project to go to the movies, we went around, and anybody who lived in Gilbert will tell you, selling donuts. My mom said, the Bible says, by the sweat of your brow is how you earn. You work hard. And that's what I believe. I believe that if I work hard today, tomorrow will be better. Thank you.
Right. Thank you. Thank you, Attorney. Senator Sanders, we'll begin with you for the next question. What I've heard on the campaign trail, again, I've been on the campaign trail and seeing you guys' announcements and whatnot, amongst all three candidates, lieutenant candidates for governor, is that you guys talk about a partnership with the governor as compared to a by-the-book playing of the role of the lieutenant governor. You speak of helping the governor make decisions. And so we know the lieutenant governor's position deals with banking and insurance and also as a sit-in for the governor when he's away. Is this a new definition we're seeing of what the role of the lieutenant governor is? And if so, Senator Sanis, how would that inform, how would that shape a Petros Sanis administration?
That's a very excellent question. From the beginning of our campaign, we have stated over and over again that we're going to be co-managers. Ali Petros and I have decided from the beginning that we are going to rely on each other's experience and managerial skills in order to better govern the territory. My background is, for the most part, social services. So in that aspect, I can be a better judge, or I can advise and give opinions and information when it comes to social services. So this is something that we have decided to do from the beginning, and I think it's going to work well because when it comes to management, you're not an expert. When it comes to governing the territory, one person should not rely on his opinion alone. He should be able to diversify. He should be able to talk to his partner, that being the lieutenant governor's office, and find out what is the best aspect or what is the best way to govern, what is the best way to look for solutions. So that from the beginning has been part of our platform, to become co-managers, to really rely on each other's skills. Ali Petros, his skills lay in business. Once again, mine lay in social services. And with our experience and with our knowledge, I think we'll be able to do a great job in terms of governing. So yes, to answer the question, we do believe in co-management. It is, as you stated, tradition, yes, to separate the roles, but we do believe that we have to work together.
Thank you, Senator. And Attorney James, is it the same for you, I suppose?
Yes, thank you for the question again. Yeah. It definitely is. One of the things about the lieutenant governor is that the lieutenant governor's roles and responsibilities can come from the Organic Act. It can come from the VI Code. It can also come from an executive order from the governor himself, who gives you and assigns you special duties. And it can also come from the personal initiative of the lieutenant governor, which if anyone knows me, they know that I believe in taking the personal initiative to make things happen in my community, whether or not that is a role that's traditional or not. When I met with Angel, he asked me what I was interested in, and I said to him, well, I was a teacher, so I definitely intend to make an impact in education. Because my father, Dr. Randall James, is a doctor, and my daughter is a physician assistant, and I have a niece who's a doctor, I also wanted to play a role in healthcare. Human services is important to me, and those three, in addition to banking and insurance, I know that I can handle. I think he saw someone who was competent. He saw someone who would work hard with him, because I believe that we both need, right now in these times that we live in, you need the Lieutenant Governor to not only focus on banking and insurance, but on all facets of government.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Senator Roach?
Well, I think it's an important question, but I first believe that if the people of the Virgin Islands decide with me that Albert Bryan is the best person to be the governor of the territory, I will support and respect him in that role. I think it's an important role. And I believe we have seen relationships in the territory between governor and lieutenant governor where that has been a problem, where the lieutenant governor does not respect the governor as the governor. Nonetheless, I believe, as we have talked about it, it is an important aspect of our decision to be a team that we recognize various strengths in one another. And so I see my role, and he has assured me that the year that he took to convince me that I should do this, and the year before that with his team looking to determine who would be the best governor, that the skills and talents that I bring to the table will have a role in this administration and will be respected as well. But I think it's critical, even in a partnership, to recognize that statutorily the governor has specific duties, and I will support him because I believe in him, and I believe that working together we can bring about the best result for the people of the territory.
Thank you, Senator. And the audience may notice that I'm asking specific questions to the Lieutenant Governor candidates, leadership styles. I'm going to save a lot of the questions on policy, on economy for the gubernatorial candidates coming up, though I have some questions relative to banking and insurance. But I'm trying to get an understanding, because any one of you could become the governor, peradventure something happens. And so here's a question to you, Attorney James. What if something arises in the territory that you are diametrically opposed to the governor with? This governor decides to move forward with this decision anyway, and it is a decision that you believe will negatively impact the territory in a very, very bad way. Nonetheless, this governor goes ahead and with that decision and moves forward. What would you do as an individual?
Well, first of all, you're saying that it is my opinion that it would be bad for the territory, and I'm only one person. In fact, I may be wrong, as opposed to the governor. But one of the wonderful things that I think Mr. Dawson is getting is he's getting someone who understands chain of command. Because as a military member, I am fully aware that, and I have served as legal counsel to 4 generals, and also here in the territory, and when I deployed to Guantanamo Bay, I was legal counsel, also there to an admiral and a brigadier general. And so I understand that my role then was to offer my legal opinion and my advice, but in fact, the commander-in-chief is who ultimately makes the decision and is responsible for the decision that he makes. Because when you decide to run for governor, you understand that you're the #1 person. And as the lieutenant governor, I understand that I would do everything to inform his decision making to the best of my ability. But at the end of the day, the governor is who makes the decision. And so, as a soldier, as a major, and as a JAG, and also as a person who understands chain of command, I will do my best to make sure that his decision is fully informed before he makes it, but I will abide by the decision because he is the governor, and I am there to support him.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Senator Roach?
It's, we have talked a lot about a variety of subjects, and it's a very important decision when you become a team, when you say that you're going to become a team. And I think we have all been in organizations or in situations when our personal likes or dislikes may be at issue. I don't value my opinion above everybody else's. And so in order for me to determine that the governor, in this case Albert, is going to embark on something that I may vehemently disagree with, I think I really have to do everything, the research, get other opinions, etc., before I determine that my opinion is the prevailing one. I will do my best to share with him the information that I believe is in the best interest in terms of decision making. But I'm not certain that if it is proven beyond my opinion that something is really potentially that would harm the Virgin Islands, I don't believe that I could go along with it.
Thank you, Senator. Senator Sanis?
Petros and I have developed a relationship over the past few months in terms of discussing issues and in terms of coming up with viable solutions. However, I do have a military background, and I strongly believe in the chain of command. When Petros is elected governor, I must abide by the rules and regulations, and I must abide by the position of lieutenant governor in terms of being the second in command. However, if it's something fundamentally wrong, something morally wrong, something that can cause harm to the people of the Virgin Islands, I should be able, and I will be able, to talk to gubernatorial candidate Petros and discuss this issue with him and try to come to some type of accord. Not one person is perfect, and that's one of the things about being a great leader. You must be able to listen to people. You must be able to surround yourself with individuals that will give you the best advice, individuals that are experts. Not one person know it all. So in a case like this, I think I should be able to sit down with Ali Petros and discuss the issues and discuss the pros and cons and possibly come to some type of solution. But once again, I do strongly believe in the chain of command, and I do believe that as an elected official, you must ensure that he knows his role, I know my role, so there'll be no chaos.
Thank you, Senator. Just a quick follow-up with you, Senator Sanis. You said you would work to come to some kind of conclusion that both of you could agree on. I suppose the question is, what if he decides to move along anyway with this decision that you believe would harm the territory?
I will put my opinions. I'll put it on the record. I will try to come to some type of solution. I will seek assistance. But at the end of the day, he was elected governor, and at the end of the day, he is in charge of the territory.
Thank you, Senator. Senator Roach, we're going to start with you, and let's get to banking and insurance for a little bit here. We recently faced two deadly Category 5 storms in 2017, and following the storms, a lot of residents had a lot of problems coming to resolutions with their insurance claims, adjusters giving them problems. Even to this day, there are a lot of bottlenecks and red tapes, and a lot of residents are complaining. What would you do in your role as the Commissioner of the Division of Banking and Insurance to streamline the process and give residents some clarity as to how they would get the issues resolved quickly?
Well, we've had these very specific discussions with the Lieutenant Governor's office as they have appeared before us. And I think a lot of people should realize that the Lieutenant Governor's office is a place available to them to lodge complaints with regard to these types of issues. At one point, I had to even remind the representatives of the Lieutenant Governor's office that they are not representatives of the banks. And I believe that that's a big part of the issue. For instance, so many people found themselves in a position where they were underinsured for property that still had a mortgage, where the bank had force-placed insurance policies for just the remainder of the mortgage. And even in those cases, the banks had very little to do, even though they were in a position to help to secure their collateral. They were doing very little to assist clients in this instance. And I believe we have to look at the banking regulations with the Lieutenant Governor as Commissioner of Banking and Insurance to ensure that banks take a different position with regard to assisting with claims, that they have an interest in these properties and they ought to be called to assist consumers where there still is a mortgage on property. In general, I think our experience with banks have shown them to be adversarial to members of our community, and I think this is an opportunity to address it through banking regulations as well.
Banking regulations. Thank you, Senator. Senator Sanis?
I truly believe that we must look at the VI code and start making some changes in terms of the antiquated language that we see and that we experience on a daily basis. I truly believe too that the Lieutenant Governor's office must ensure the public that they can come to the office and get answers to their question. For the past few months, I've noticed that there have been workshops, and I attended a few of the workshops, and I had some very good conversations with individuals that are working in the Lieutenant Governor's office. But this must be done year-round. We have insurance policy holders who really don't understand the language in their policies. Insurance policy holders who, unfortunately, when they went to get their insurance, it wasn't detailed out in terms, it wasn't explained to them. And if you look at the typical insurance policy, you'll notice, even to an individual who has had experience, that there are certain segments of it that really needs to be broken down. So I truly believe that more workshops have to be done. We must reach out to the public and ensure them that the Lieutenant Governor's office is available to help them and to provide answers to their questions.
Right, Senator. So just a quick follow-up again, sure. Trying to get a specific as to what would you do to help alleviate the stresses that the residents go through. There's a lot of bottlenecks. The banks and insurance companies, they feel as if they have an advantage over residents sometimes.
We need to streamline, and we must also open up the opportunity to have more banks, to be more competitive when it comes to banks. If you think about it, we have two major banks here in the Virgin Islands. I don't want to name them, but we have two major banks. What we need to do is offer more competition, have the ability to attract more banks here to the Virgin Islands, so there will be, once again, more competition.
All right, so you're saying you would look for more competition, more banks into the territory. That's what you would do. Thank you. Attorney James?
Well, one of the things that I think we do in the Virgin Islands too often is that we react and we don't act. Recently, I think we in the Virgin Islands who have had insurance have all been receiving now notices from our insurance companies that require us to sign saying that we understand the conditions of being underinsured. Think about it. We got this after we went through Maria and Irma. What we didn't get before we purchased the insurance was the insurance agents and companies explaining to us what underinsured means. So I feel that, and I strongly believe that the insurance companies abdicated their responsibility to provide us with the necessary information that we needed in order to purchase the insurance that we need that would be adequate. I think that the Lieutenant Governor's office has to be a stronger advocate on behalf of the people of the Virgin Islands when we go through this type of dilemma where the insurance company really is holding the handle and we're holding the blade. If in fact, and as a matter of fact, I am of the opinion that there were errors and omissions in terms of the responsibilities that the insurance companies had.
Senator, so I'm sorry, Attorney James. So what would you do to help alleviate what the residents are going through? How would you change it?
Well, that's what I'm saying. After the fact, they're now educating the people of the Virgin Islands and making us sign, but really it is a condition of being insured. They're having us sign saying we understand that we're underinsured, when in fact, that was something that we should have known before the hurricanes hit. So what would I do? Again, as a teacher, I'm going to make sure that we are properly educated, that we understand, especially after the hurricane. I had a lot of service members asking me to explain why the mortgage company or the lenders could tell them what to do with their money. They didn't understand that you need to read that document and make sure that you understand that document when you seek a loan from the lending institutions.
All right, Senator Sanes?
Yes.
Next question is for you. What changes would you implement, if any, to open up commercial lending to small businesses in the territory?
Repeat that question again.
What changes would you implement, if any, to open up commercial lending to small businesses in the territory?
Great. That's previously when I mentioned that we need to open up the market to get more banks here. That's one of the changes that I'd like to introduce. Also, too, we must open these the market to other lending institutions. For instance, there is a lending corporation institution that we are trying to bring in. In other words, this is an entity that can actually lend money to a consumer, and it's not bogged down by the bylaws and rules and regulations of a typical bank. This is an institution that can actually lend money at a lower rate. For instance, Walmart is doing it right now in the States. And this is what we need, because right now the small business owner, in order for them to get established, from my experience and from what we've been getting the reports in my office, oftentimes they are so discouraged because of the paperwork. They're often times that they are just not given enough information. So we must streamline the process. We must make it available. And I want to digress a little in terms of helping small business owners. We must establish an office in which it will be like a one-stop center in which an individual who wants to start a business, who wants to really move ahead in terms of establishing a business, can actually in one day get the permits, and one day get all the necessary documents so they can start establishing their business and start paying taxes to our coffers.
Okay. And thank you, Senator. I'm coming to you in a bit, Attorney James. So one thing we've had for a long time in the territory is, you know, we talk about these things and they're never implemented, whether it's at debates or forums. Are you saying that those are the things that you would do?
I'm telling you that right now, as a senator, we submitted the legislation so that can become a reality. One of them is being the Delaware Corporation legislation, which will enable outside businesses to become incorporated here. The state of Delaware is collecting tens of millions of dollars in just fees, allowing corporations to be established here. We can do the same thing here. And that is already being submitted as legislation.
All right. Thank you, Senator. Attorney James.
Thank you, Mr. Gilbert. Well, first of all, I would, as the Lieutenant Governor, once I get in as Lieutenant Governor, the first thing that I would have to do is meet with the bankers, because and lending institutions, I don't know whether or not that is in fact true, that they're not lending to small businesses. It would be unfortunate if in fact they are discriminating against businesses in the Virgin Islands simply because we're small businesses, because small businesses really are the job creators, not large companies. One of the things, though, is I would definitely try to find out why, if in fact it is that they're not lending to small businesses, why is that so? Why are they not doing so? Because we cannot be the depositors in this community and then you're lending money elsewhere. That would be totally unfair. At the same time, we need to find out the reasons behind the lack of or low issuance of loans to small businesses in our community. It's a community bank really drives investment in the community by lending money to small businesses, by lending money to members in the community to purchase homes, by making sure that in fact we have a financially secure community, because if we do, they make money. So they need to then reinvest back in the community where they exist.
Thank you. Senator Roach?
Well, I think two things. I think we have a hidden resource in the Government Development Bank, which is an arm of the Economic Development Authority. And I think I would want to be more aggressive in terms of ensuring that those resources that are available through that arm, that those resources are made available to small businesses. In addition to that, I think we ought to work with the banks to determine what new products can be made available. And I think we have to look at the banking climate and to realize with all of this economic activity that is going to be taking place in the territory because of these dollars coming in for the rebuilding of infrastructure, that we can make the territory more attractive to additional banks. Growing up in the Virgin Islands, I lived in the town of Charlotte Amalia, and the banks, I mean, I didn't have enough fingers to count them. Right now, we have two major banks and some others, minor players in the banking world. But I think we have to attack it from two perspectives. One, our own government development bank, and two, working with our banks and attracting more banks into the territory to bring more products in.
Okay, thank you, Senator. I'm just going to be asking a few follow-ups, and remember the follow-up questions are only 30 seconds. And Senator Roach, I'm going to start with you again. I love to emphasize that when we speak of these issues and responses are given, we usually get decent answers, but not necessarily commitments to implement those answers. So, Senator Roach, are we saying that your answer tonight is what you would do as part of your role as a Lieutenant Governor?
Oh, absolutely. And one very specific thing that Albert and I have spoken about is an entrepreneurship initiative that focuses on the historic towns, that looks at encouraging business development in Frederiksted, in Christiansted, in Charlotte Amalia, and of course the historic town of Cruz Bay. And to create a system of loans that would support people who want to develop businesses in the historic towns, and to further go to reserve some funding for young entrepreneurs below the age of 25. So it's a specific initiative that we have discussed.
All right, Senator, thank you very much. We're now going to go into our closing statements. And again, we're going to start from Senator Sanis. Come up this way. So please, Senator Sanis, with your closing statement.
First of all, I want to once again thank WTJX and, of course, you, sir, the VI Consortium, for allowing us the opportunity to address certain issues and to talk to the people of the Virgin Islands. I think this has been very fruitful. I think on my behalf, I got some good ideas out of it. And I want to tell the people of the Virgin Islands that Ali Petros and I, we're going to work as a team. We're going to work as co-managers. We're going to work to make this a better place for all of us. This is very important to me. As a family man, Ali being a family man, we have our children to think about. We have the younger generation, the future generation, and we want to make sure that we are able to offer opportunities for them, not just employment, but opportunities for them to come back home and start their own family. The Virgin Islands is truly a gem. It's one of the most beautiful places that I lived on. I've traveled halfway around the world, and I might be a little bit biased, but I truly believe that, once again, the Virgin Islands is truly beautiful. It's got a lot of opportunities, and we once again got to do what's best. Ali Petros and I, we're dedicated, we're hard workers. We want, once again, to make this a better place for all of us. We want to make this a better place for all the families, and we want to ensure the people that we are committed 100% to do it. This is the greatest opportunity that we have right now, and we are going to accomplish it. Thank you, and God bless.
Senator Roach.
Thank you again to WTJX and to the Virgin Islands Consortium for this opportunity to share ideas with you, the viewers. I debated a long time to join the team Brian Roach. It was a difficult decision for me because I was in a comfortable place in the Senate. But I could not imagine 4 more years under this administration, number one. And two, I evaluated every person who had identified themselves as a candidate for governor at that time. And when I looked at the background of Albert Bryan, his experience in private sector enterprises such as Hovenza, and innovative, his work with children in the Junior Achievement Program, and when I considered my desire to remain in the Virgin Islands as my home, and when I considered the quality of leadership that I could bring based on my distinguished record in the territory, I believed in joining that team and specific things that they had spent. We spent a year putting together a GERS proposal. We spent time talking about ideas such as that entrepreneurship initiative, ideas like making college tuition free admission to our state institution, the University of the Virgin Islands, with certain criteria for students coming in. Earth-shattering ideas that I believe can bring real change, and I ask you to support us in the election on August 4th.
Thank you, Senator. Attorney James?
Good evening to everyone, and I hope you enjoyed our presentations tonight. Many people ask me, how do I distinguish myself from the other lieutenant gubernatorial candidates in the Democratic primary? Well, first of all, the most important distinction, and I believe a meaningful one, is that I am a woman. And I strongly believe that it is time for women to take their place at the decision-making table with men, so that when policies, programs, and decisions are made in the Virgin Islands, they are balanced and our lives will be more enriched. Women bring a unique perspective because we grew up and our experience has been female. And so that is the unique perspective that we bring. Women have been enormous contributors to the society. Women have families. Women issues are all of our issues. I have also been an educator, an attorney, a mediator. I have served as legal counsel to a governor, a commissioner, senator, and to 4 generals. From some of them, I've learned what great leadership is. From others, I have learned what toxic leadership is. I believe in getting up every day and working hard to make tomorrow better. When I met Angel Dawson, I knew that I had met a man of character, competence, compassion, candor, and who cares about the Virgin Islands. I'm already in November. On August 4th, vote number 1, Angel Dawson and Maurice James. Thank you.
All right, Senator Ernice, Senator Roach, Attorney James, thank you very much for joining us. That's all the time we have for the Lieutenant Governor Candidate Forum. Coming up, we'll hear from the 3 Democrats vying for the territory's top office. First, however, a word from the Virgin Islands election system. Here's everything you need to know about the upcoming primary election on August 4th.
Get up, get up, get out, get out, get up, get out and vote. Get up, get up, get out, get out, get up, get out and vote.
I am Caroline Fox, the Supervisor of Elections, and my optimism about the 2018 primary election, we're hoping for a good turnout, and that usually is 30 to 40% of the persons that's registered to vote. In the St. Croix district, we have over 15,000 registered Democrat voters, and in the St. Thomas St. John district, it's a little over 16,000 registered Democrats. So that's why it's a primary for them to come out with 7 for the legislature, 1 for the delegate race, 1 for the gubernatorial race, and then they go forward to the general election. In the St. Croix district, we have 5 polling places. Claudio Marco, we have the Educational Complex, we have Juanita Gardine, we have DC Canegata Bar Park, and Ricardo Richards. In the St. Thomas district, we will now have 3. Charles Turnbull Library, Lockhart Elementary School, and UVI Sports and Fitness Center. In the St. John district, we have 1, that's Julia Sprout, which is the school there in St. John. With our new cards that we have now, the voter registration card, we put the polling place on the card, the voter registration card, so that kind of gives them a reference to ensure where the polling place is. But they can always call the office. St. Croix office, 773-1021, and in the St. Thomas office, 774-3107. Once they enter the polling place, you go up to what's called a clerk. They have a laptop on the desk, which is the clerk that checks you in. So they verify that you're at the right polling place and that you can vote. You can utilize any government issue ID card, or if you have your voter's ID card on hand.
An elector has 2 choices after they have checked in on election day to vote. They could walk up to the booth and fill in the ballot, or they could go to our new machine, the Express Vote. First, I'll fill in the ballot. The elector will come into the blue booth and make their choices. Each contest gives you its instructions. You can only vote for 1 for certain races, and for the senatorial races, you'll vote for 7. If you would like to do a write-in, you'll fill in the bubble next to the write-in section and write in the candidate name that you would like. The ballot is both front and back, so you have to complete the front and back. Or the elector will come up to the express vote and make the selections. The express vote is only going to print the selections you make on the screen. It does not count your vote on election day. On the left-hand side of the elector, they can pull away the keypad and make the selections from the keypad, or they can touch on the screen. They can raise the volume to pause the screen or to black out your screen. Again, the machine is going to give you the instructions. To do a write-in, you simply select write-in and type in what you would like to write in. And while you're doing the write-in, the machine reads out what you typed. On this machine, it never allows you to overvote, so even though you make the more than the appropriate selections, it will notify you. If they're satisfied, they would hit next at the bottom of the screen. Now they'll print the selections they made on top of the activator card. Once the activator card has been printed, now it has officially become a ballot. Regardless of which way the elector chooses to mark their ballot, they have to come to the DS200, which is where the votes are tabulated. For the express vote card, they would come and feed it to the top of the tray of the machine. Don't force it in, let the machine pull the ballots and continue looking at the screen until it tells you thank you for voting, your ballot has been counted. And for the ballot that you marked by hand, it would go to the bottom of the tray. And now you have completed your voting.
Okay, on August 4th, like I stated, the polls close at 7 p.m. So the judges will take out the jump drive, the tape, and put them in a secure bag and return them with a police escort to the Board of Elections office, which is the elections office in 2 districts, St. Thomas and St. Croix. And the board will go through the process of verifying that it came from the right polling place and all the documentation is there, and then it's turned over to the voting technician who feeds the jump drive into a computer and get the results. The St. Thomas results, you'll just see the St. Thomas district only. Once that information is verified in St. Thomas, it's transmitted to St. Croix, and then on the St. Croix end, you'll see the whole voting for St. Croix and St. Thomas, totally combined. So the combination is done in the St. Croix office. After the absentees tabulated, which is 10 days after the election, they have 5 days after that to certify the election. And that's the board members. And then it's turned over to the supervisor of election, who in turn start to notify all the candidates of their results, etc., officially in a written document. Like I said, and I'll close with our team, your vote is your voice, and your voice is your vote. So again, we're encouraging folks to come out and vote. When you vote, it matters. One vote makes a difference, because someone can win by 1 vote or lose by 1 vote. So every vote counts.
Every vote counts. If you want to make a difference, you must exercise your rights.
Welcome back to Decision 2018, a Democratic Gubernatorial Candidate Forum presented by WTJX Channel 12 and the Virgin Islands Consortium. I'm now joined by Angel Dawson, Albert Bryan, and Alison Petrus, the 3 Democrats hoping to lead the territory come 2019. The same rules apply. Candidates have 90 seconds for an introductory statement, followed by 90 seconds to answer each question, and 30 seconds for a follow-up response if necessary. Candidates will be given in-studio cues at 30 seconds and 15 seconds left of response time. And this sound signals that time is up. Mr. Dawson, please introduce yourself to the audience.
Thank you, Ernice, and good evening to my fellow Virgin Islanders and friends. I'm Angel Dawson, and I'm a candidate for Governor of the Virgin Islands on the Democratic Party slate. I, by way of background and personal information, am the first of 7 children. I was born to a young teenage mother and spent many of my formative years growing up in the Dunu housing community on St. Thomas. I've been married to my wife, Leslie, for the past 22 years, and we have a grown daughter that lives in New York. By way of career background, I'm a career banker, having started my career at the Chase Manhattan Bank and having risen through the ranks to assistant treasurer of Chase Manhattan Bank, and most recently served as senior vice president and commercial business manager of the largest commercial institution here in the Virgin Islands. Of course, many of you also know me as the former Commissioner of Finance and Executive Director of the Public Finance Authority. I do believe that with that background, having served as banker to the government essentially for the last 10 years, that given our current financial situation, that I bring the necessary skill sets to lead this territory out of the financial morass that it is in right now. Maurice and I truly believe in a better tomorrow, and we ask you to believe in yourself to believe in us, and to believe in a better tomorrow. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Mr. Bryan.
Good evening, Ernice, and I'd like to thank WTJX as well as the Consortium for allowing us this venue for the Virgin Islands to see for the last time the three of us on a stage. Tonight, Albert Bryan and the Tregenza Roach team ask for your vote, and a vote because we want you to empower a team that has vision, a vision to make the Virgin Islands the best in technology, tourism, and trade in the next 10 years. We ask you to vote for a team that has a mission for purposeful government, a mission to provide a delivery of services to facilitate the best standard of living for all Virgin Islanders and everyone who comes to visit here. And we also provide with you a platform, a strategy in the form of a platform that has four main tenets that everyone can understand. Number one, bringing back and stabilizing our government with transparency and restoring the trust that we once had, including creating a system where we have the bond creditors' confidence again. Taking that trust and encouraging investment, whether public or private sector. And once we get that investment, putting our people to work, making sure that we retain those dollars and they stay in the Virgin Islands. And finally, making sure that we take those tax dollars and reinvest them in our infrastructure, our roads, our hospital, our schools, our education systems. Tregenza and I believe that we can build a Virgin Islands. We can change course from the mainstay and the status quo that we have experienced for 30 years. We need to change course now and build a Virgin Islands for all of us.
Thank you. Mr. Petrus?
Good evening. Good evening to the public, and I want to thank WTJX for this opportunity. My name is Allison Ali Petrus, and I'm running with Senator Samuel Sanis to be your next governor of the United States Virgin Islands. Like Senator Sanis, I'm a United States military veteran. As one who grew up in a public housing community, I understand the value of getting a helping hand. So what I have done is pledge my commitment to this community by giving back to this community. In giving back to this community, I followed the creed of Frederick Douglass, who said, "It is much easier to build stronger children than to fix broken men." In building stronger children, we created Graffiti Street, Positive Tree Inc., and Zero Tolerance Basketball. Not only in my second phase of my career, I went into the legislature, and in working with my colleagues, we developed also the Cardiac Center in St. Croix and the Cancer Center in St. Thomas. Senator Sanis and I want to be your next gubernatorial candidates who go on to the general election. It is important for us to understand that the governor that we have right now, it is not doing a great service to us. So it is time for us to make the necessary changes, and we see ourselves as the best candidates to do so in this upcoming election.
All right, thank you, Mr. Petrus. We're going to start the first question with you, Mr. Dawson.
Yes, Ernice.
So it's not often time that someone who's chosen as second in command gets to actually lead the territory, but this has happened in the past and may happen again. How much effort and work went into your process of selecting a second in command?
Ernice, that's an excellent question. And as you indicated, we have had an instance in our history before where a governor died in office and the lieutenant governor had to assume the reins of power. And that was foremost in my mind as I considered who I would ask to be my running mate. And in Attorney Maurice James, I have found not only a woman, but a very competent woman with a legal background that is going to be a full partner in this government. So in the event that something were to happen to me as governor, there would be no intervening interruption. Maurice would be aware of everything that is happening within the government and would be able to carry forth the government very efficiently and immediately. I find that Maurice, with her military background and her military bearing, commands respect. And should we have any interruption of communication between the territory, between the capital and between St. Croix in the event of a natural disaster, that retired Major James will be able to very competently marshal the people of St. Croix and lead them to safety. So that was definitely a very important consideration in the event that we were to have our communications interrupted, as well as if something were to happen to the governor and she had to assume the reins of power.
Mr. Bryan?
If there's one thing you will learn about me if you haven't learned already, it is about preparedness. Over 2 years ago, when we decided that we would seek the office of governor, we got together with a core team and we actually created a plan of what that trek would look like. Most important part of that plan was the lieutenant governor. We had a criteria that we had and had a team of actually 10 people that sat down and narrowed it down from 17 names to 3. Tregenza Roach was the #1 candidate on that list. And a year before the election, we started a conversation where we talked about what we liked and what we didn't like. At the time, Tregenza told me, he said he believes that perfection is what is lacking from service, that people don't focus on doing their own job properly and perfecting that craft. And as a senator, he felt that he wanted to perfect his craft as senator. And if we all did our jobs, what a wonderful world would be. That conversation continued for over 1 year as I talked about all the issues and why he should join me in this quest to be governor and lieutenant governor. And in the end, it wasn't me that convinced him, but it was the thought that if he didn't become a part of this team, that we would have to go through 4 more years of a Governor Mapp Potter team, that we wouldn't have the leadership that we need to lead the Virgin Islands through this very delicate time in this history. And he decided to change course and join the Brian Roach team. And that's why we are together at this point.
Thank you. Mr. Petrus?
Yeah, thank you for the question. This was a very easy decision for me. And when I spoke to Senator Sanis, he presented himself as a genuine person, a person who really loves people, a person who is a family man. And as we began to talk, we realized that we had so much in common. Basic things like we shared military experiences, we shared family experiences in terms of his family, my family. And the one thing that we would say that we hold very dear to us is the fact that we are both family men. He has a wonderful family, and needless to say, the same applies for myself. And so in making this decision, I realized that he was someone who had not only the capability, but this is a guy that is very, very dedicated to his job. We walk through this community, meet a whole lot of people, walk through community where people have tops on their roof. And one thing consistently, they always express to me what Senator Sanis had done for them. He is a person at the core. He's a good human being. I always say that. And what I love about him is that he is always willing to help other people. So he is one definitely that will help our community, help the Virgin Islands move forward should something happen to myself.
All right, thank you. Thank you, everyone. The next question. I've heard every one of you on the campaign trail. We've been covering this from the onset. And of course, you've chided the governor. You've chided him on education, on the current state of the territory. But let's be honest. GERS was in trouble before the current governor. Borrowing capacity was shot before the current governor. We laid off people in the past administration, 8% cut of salaries in the past administration, taxes, tax refunds was stopped at one point in the past administration. Going back 2 administrations, we've had 16 years of democratic rule. So here's the question. Does the Democratic Party take any responsibility for the state of the territory? Starting with you, Mr. Bryan.
Of course, the Democratic Party has to take responsibility for the state of the territory. And when we knock the governor, I don't think we're knocking him because he isn't putting forth any effort. The fact is that, yes, these problems existed, but it's the course that we're taking in order to solve the problems. And you'd hear these 2 candidates talk about the problems, or any other candidate. They talk about doing things better. Well, we have to do things differently, not better. Better is not enough. And that's why I'm in this race. And because we have to change course in the way that we approach our problems, clustering our departments in order to address serious problems that have been plaguing us, making sure that we connect all of the resources of government, whether you're in education or labor or housing, parks and recreation. If you're a maintenance person, we should be able to reassign you in teams to address problems. Whether you, so when we look at our government, the way that we conduct business is 40 years old. Our management system and all the things that we do are from a time in the 60s. we need to create a leadership system that is flatter, where we can get the input of more people and we can address problems with timelines and specific goals and achievements that we have to do in order to get forward. Without that, we won't be able to move this government forward. And without that, we will continue to be able to blame the leadership, the poor leadership that is represented by MAP. And putting the Democratic team together is a matter of just leadership and getting the right person out of this primary as a titular head of the party.
Thank you. Thank you. Mr. Petrus?
Yeah, thank you for that question. Of course, we all, and when I say we all in the community, we all have to bear some kind of responsibility as to where we are today. However, if we're honest with ourselves, we must say that at this point, we had the opportunity to grow this economy. We had an opportunity to create more businesses. And we got to admit to ourselves one thing, that the governor that we have now is not a good manager. Let me give you a case in point. When you look at business growth, business development, you look at the prior administration, the numbers in licensing and consumers affairs in terms of the number of businesses and what they got in total revenues, at that point, it was $3.8 million. When this administration took over, the numbers flatlined at $2.1 million in terms of revenues. That's a decrease, a drastic decrease. What does it have to do with? Management, once again. You got to be able to manage downstream what happens in your department. And so we submit ourselves, Senator Sanis and I, as good managers, people who would look at these true indicators and look at where we need to go in order to increase and have our numbers trending in the right direction. That's what I say. This governor has no clue as to how to manage.
Thank you. Mr. Dawson?
Well, Ernice, I must say, first of all, we must remember and recognize that the Democratic Party is the party that built the middle class of the Virgin Islands going back to the 1950s and 60s. And I believe that the essence of the Democratic Party remains intact. We should be very careful about chiding the Democratic Party, because I think that the Democratic Party has in many instances been the salvation of the Virgin Islands. Can we do things better? Certainly we can, but I would not say that the Democratic Party has been responsible for the problems that we have in this territory, or in any way conflate Kenneth Mapp and the Democratic Party. I also take exception with a statement that you made regarding the state of the finances and the borrowing ability of the government of the Virgin Islands. I take great pride in the fact that as Executive Director of the Public Finance Authority, we were able to establish the best bond ratings that this territory has ever had, despite the difficult economic conditions that we were faced with. We achieved the lowest borrowing costs that we've ever achieved. And in less than 3 years since I left office in 2014, we have seen this administration drive the bond ratings into the ground for the government of the Virgin Islands, and it can't even borrow at any rate. So that is truly poor management, mismanagement, and that is why I'm in this race, to ensure that we can return the competence and the ability that we had previously in this government.
So a follow-up here, Mr. Dawson. So to be clear, you're saying the Democratic Party should feel no blame for the current state of the territory, even if this Democratic Party, prior to this administration, just going back 2 administrations, led for 16 years. No blame at all? No responsibility?
Ernice, I'm not saying that there's no responsibility. I'm just cautioning that we don't want to conflate the Democratic Party with Kenneth Mapp, because in those 16 years, we had many EDC beneficiaries come into this territory, and our tax rolls actually increased significantly. We had external factors such as the Great Recession that impacted us severely between 2008 and 2011. We also had something occur that was beyond our control, the closure of the Hovenza refinery on St. Croix.
I got to follow up again here. You said that you left the government with the best credit rating it had for a while. The MAP administration, the first attempt to seek funds in the bond market was refused upon entering government. It had done nothing at all. So whose fault is that?
Well, it may be the fault of the way that the deals that they were attempting to achieve were structured. because I sat on the other side in many instances and paid very close attention, even outside of government, as to what was occurring in government, and feel that it was a critical mistake for this administration to tell the rating agencies that they were not going to provide the information that they had become accustomed to receiving. You know, when you're a journalist, you know that you really should be very careful not to annoy people that buy ink by the barrel and paper by the roll.
Thank you. Thank you, sir. Next question, we'll start with you, Mr. Petrus. Of course, the governor has fielded a lot of criticism with the way he handled the aftermath of Hurricanes Irma and Maria. What would you have done differently from the current governor?
The one thing that I would have done, because commerce is so important and because it is important for us to be able to get back to a state of normalcy, you must bring the airport back online as soon as possible. You must also clear the road to the point where people can get back to a sense of normalcy. And the state of emergency, which still exists today, at that time, people were very frustrated, they felt very pent up. And so I thought that we were not handling the recovery proper enough to be able to get to the people who are most affected. Today, as we sit here, people still have blue tops on their roof. And this is close to hurricane season. And so not only did they mishandle that situation, they still continue to bobble the ball because our airport is not at full functionality. And that's the gateway to our economy. And many things, when you look into each one of these departments, it is total disaster. And so what we would have done a whole lot different was bring back our airport to full functionality as soon as possible so that we can create a sense of normalcy and bring people and different equipments and material into the islands. We also would have been able to get rid of the curfew a lot earlier so that we can open businesses, create a sense of normalcy where commerce continue to thrive.
Thank you. Mr. Dawson?
Yes, to answer your question, the very first thing that I would have done differently than the governor is to be sure to hire knowledgeable, competent individuals in the emergency management agencies of this government, and those that would take the territorial emergency operation plan that envisions almost every scenario that is possible with regards to natural and man-made disasters and know what the protocols are to respond in the event of an emergency. And one of the things that the TEOP would indicate is that you should forward deploy certain basic necessities in the event of an emergency. There's absolutely no reason, and it's inexcusable, that we did not have tarps pre-positioned in the Virgin Islands knowing that we had a major hurricane breathing down on us. We're not novices with regards to hurricanes. We're very experienced. We've had Hurricane Hugo, we've had Hurricane Marilyn, and we should know that there are certain basic things that you're going to need leading up to and in the aftermath of a hurricane. And these things clearly were not done, and it is inexcusable that our people were told lies on many occasions in terms of the availability of tarps, MREs, what have you, only to be running hither and yon in the aftermath of a major disaster, adding to their stress. So hire the right people, ensure that the territorial emergency plan is read and that you have exercises surrounding that plan, and we will be ready for natural and man-made disasters.
Thank you. Mr. Bryan?
I think the number one word is prepare. The first thing is prepare. And having been a commissioner for 8 years, I have prepared for at least 6 storms and other natural disasters. There's a territorial emergency operation plan called the TEOP that every department knows and has a function to do. Every department and every commissioner has a role to play in that TEOP, making sure that from June 1 and even before, that we are ready to face the storm season. Most importantly, I think the governor's mistake was taking it on as the Ken Map show. Having a press conference every day and flaunting all of the things that he wanted to talk about and making jokes while people were really suffering in our community. You have 23 different offices of government, and each one of them has a role. It seemed that we were attacking the problem one by one. Maybe the schools today, and then maybe we work on the roads later, and then maybe we work on the electricity another day. But when you're paying somebody upwards of $100,000, that person has to be able to report to our department, open it up, make an assessment of what's going on, and then put his people or her people into action according to the territorial operational plan. I would also add that once you have these things together, it makes it much easier the day after the storm when contracts are already in place and people can deploy bulldozers, trucks, water, food, tarps, whatever it is needed from different strategic points on the island rather than trying to scramble to get to Government House to find out what's happening in the Virgin Islands today.
All right, thank you. We're going to start with you, Mr. Dawson. Let's talk about campaign finance disclosure here. On the U.S. mainland, the sponsors of candidates get as much attention as the candidate themselves, because oftentimes, these partnerships comes with attachment. What are you going to do for me when you get into office? Will you commit to disclosing your major sponsors?
It's not an option. The Virgin Islands Code and the Board of Elections has a very strict protocol in place that requires that there be campaign disclosure, and there are reports that are becoming due that will be filed at the time required, and it will be full disclosure. So yes.
Thank you.
Well, Ms. Brown, I'm going to have to tell them that you gave me that $20 in order to get my campaign going. It is the law. But I think more so than that, when I speak to the donors that are contributing to the Brian Roach campaign, it's the mom and pops, the people in the community that really just want to see it do better. They want to see their grandchildren. They want to be able to walk the streets and not be attacked by people and feel safe in their homes at night. We do have some larger donors that can afford to give more money, but those people want the best for the Virgin Islands, things like paved roads and clean streets. They don't want anything ominous. Now, all the time in any campaign, there are going to be special interests that come along that have particular projects that want to get their things done. But the campaign financing laws restrict you to $1,000 per person per campaign. As Democrats, we have 2 shots at it, and that's the maximum you can get. It's a tough job raising campaign funds, but we try to do it by doing little fundraisers and reaching out to people just like you. For that little $10 or that $20, we appreciate you giving that money on our website. And every single one of our campaign donors will thoroughly be disclosed in accordance with the Virgin Islands Code.
Thank you. Mr. Petrus.
Ditto. Yeah, the disclosure that we are going to be engaging in is required, and we are going to fully disclose based on the reporting guidelines who will give to us. And so let me just make a little, statement here. We encourage everybody to come out to our fish fries on Friday so that you can contribute to our campaign, and we will disclose every single one of you. But on a serious note, people who give, they want to make sure that our community is improved. They give because they believe in our candidacy, and the limits that they give is based on what the law dictates. And so that's what we will continue to do.
Thank you. I'm going to start with you, Mr. Brian. Let's talk about GERS here for a minute. This is very important, and what we're looking for, what your administration will do if you were to be elected governor. Now let's talk about GERS. It's about to collapse. We know this 2023, $4 billion liability. What is the Brian Roach plan to save or salvage GERS?
Well, the Brian Roach team actually put together a GERS plan that we had 2 town hall meetings on, 1 on each island. Thank you for those residents that came to the town hall and gave your comments. We actually presented our GERS plan to both Gruff in St. Thomas and St. Croix retirees, and we also presented it to a team at the GERS to get comment. And what our plan seeks to do is, number 1, secure those people that are already on an annuity and are retired and make sure that they are whole. Number 2, make sure that the vested people in the government are made whole, even though that going forward they may be able to, they're collecting at a lesser rate in terms of the years that they're accumulating. Whatever they have worked for thus far will be secured. And number 3, giving the new entrants into the market an option of having a 401k plan that they can borrow from for their first home or their education, as well as an annuity that they will ensure that they will be getting a check every month once they retire. The plan itself also names 4 different types of revenue sources in order to finance the plan and to make sure that the plan is solvent. The plan also ensures that immediately we decrease the unfunded liability and puts the Virgin Islands in a better position to get a better bond rating and be able to borrow from the stock market once again. This plan was not something that we came up with overnight. It's a look on the faces of hardworking Virgin Islanders when they found out how much the plan was in jeopardy of being foreclosed on.
Okay, Mr. Bryan, you mentioned 4 funding sources. You want to mention those?
Okay, the 4 funding sources are the opportunity to get another distillery, the opportunity to do internet gaming and sports gaming, a cannabis registry in the Virgin Islands that would allow for patent money being paid back to the Virgin Islands, and also for the fact that our calculation on our rum cover over has been being calculated incorrectly for years. There are 2 different calculations, one for the direct rum input from the Virgin Islands, and another tranche that we get because all the rum that comes from the Caribbean is also taxed, and we get a piece of that.
So just to follow up here again, Mr. Bryan, what if the ideas you have don't pull through? We're talking about another chance for distillery and gaming. What is the backup plan here?
Well, that's the perfect question. Because even if we never got a dime from any one of those, the plan that we are proposing immediately lowers the unfunded liability because it doesn't allow for the people who are already in the plan to accumulate the benefit to the plan in the future years as rapidly as they did in the post years. And the new entrants into the plan also give the opportunity for workers to be introduced into a new plan at a lesser rate for the government and more security for people who are already vested in the system.
Thank you. Mr. Petrus.
Thanks for the question. I must begin by saying that if the GERS was to fail, it would have the seismic effect of a stock market crash in our community. And so it is very important that we do whatever we can to make sure we sustain the system. Having said that, I must say that based on the numbers that I see, the system in itself, the model that we have right now, we can basically say is hard to sustain. It is not sustainable. And the reason why I say that is that the system accrue on an annual basis close to $130, $150 million after payout and expenses and the monies that coming in, about $130, $150 million. And so we're talking about how can we bridge that gap on an annual basis. The basic things that we would do is actually follow the law. The law requires for $7 million to go in every year into the system from the central government, and we would at least follow that law. It also requires that the government pay in every single week as part of the gross payroll that it takes out from employees' checks into the system. We will make sure we do that. The system also needs to, because of the model that we have right now, transition from the defined benefit model that we have right now to a model such as a 401k. The only problem with that, the transition period is what we have to make sure that we create a hybrid system to be able to transition from one system to the next.
So, Mr. Petrus, a follow-up here. Explain what you would do. So, you're saying you would let it collapse into 401k? What is that?
No, I'm not saying I would let it collapse. Okay, it would need to transition to a 401k. What happens though is that because that's why they call it a pyramid kind of a system or scheme. Because existing employees is what pay for existing retirees. Existing employees right now is at 7,200. Existing retirees is about 9,300. And so you could see that imbalance right there in terms of the system relies on existing employees to pay for existing retirees. Based on those numbers in itself, we have to create more of a hybrid system where the existing employees transition, where a portion of the existing employees go into the current system and a portion of it goes into a 401k.
So, Mr. Petrus, I'm gonna go back to you here again. So, what is the plan for that transition? Do you have a plan?
Well, definitely, it is not one of the easiest things, but one of the things that I know to create immediate cash flow, as Mr. Bryan said, is about getting another rum distillery. That's immediate cash flow into the system and into the government.
Okay, thank you.
Well,
Mr. Dawson.
Good ideas all around, and I am on record as having stated that in addition to having Tier 1 and Tier 2, that we need to have a further division within the GERS, and that is having a defined contribution plan in addition to the defined benefits plan that we have presently, which would be akin to a 401k. And I do believe that we, for a period of time, may not be able to match the employees' contributions, but whatever they contribute to the plan will be theirs. It will be portable. However, as an aside, I'm almost bemused when I hear folks in government and even candidates for office speaking with urgency now about the collapse or the imminent collapse of the GERS, because I have been that voice crying about the GERS for some time. As Commissioner of Finance, I was proud that we always made the contributions to the GERS on a timely basis, but I also served as a member of the Pension Reform Task Force that looked at the issues of the GERS. It included members of the executive branch, the legislative branch, consultants for a year and a half, submitted a comprehensive report to the legislature with recommendations and legislation in 2012. And there are two members of the legislature that are now running for lieutenant governor on the other two tickets that are here at this table today. And the legislatures that they were a part of never did anything to implement any of the recommendations that were made by the Pension Reform Task Force.
Thank you. So a quick follow-up here. The plan. What is your plan? It's good that you were taking the actions you were taking, but we know where we're at now. GERS itself says 2023 and we're collapsing. And we know what that would do to our economy. Do you have a plan to save it?
Well, a central part of that plan, as I indicated, is that we have for newer employees a defined contribution plan in addition to the defined benefit plan that's currently there, once again akin to a 401k. But many of the solutions that we're discussing here are nibbling around the edges of a $4 billion problem. At the end of the day, what solves the GERS issues, unless we're able to find another rum manufacturer, would be to grow the economy of the Virgin Islands so that the tax base of the islands can sustain additional contributions to the GERS, and that is what we propose to do.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Petrus, next question is for you, begins with you. Let's talk about education here for a while. We've had an ongoing brain drain issue in the territory. We lose our youngest and brightest to the mainland US. Not only that, we are losing teachers, right? Educators are leaving for the mainland and they are not turning back. Further, our territory's schooling facilities are woefully behind in regards to 21st century learning facilities. So let's talk about this. What is the Petrus-Sanis plan to first attract and retain the young and bright of the territory who've left? What is the plan to keep our teachers here? And what is the plan for facilities to get them 21st century ready?
Thank you for that question. As far as the plan in terms of trying to get new teachers here in our territory, we have, as part of our platform, the Teacher Education Academy. It's more like the ROTC program where in 11th and 12th grade, we would have individuals who are interested in going to the University of the Virgin Islands on a free 4-year scholarship who would be studying teaching, but first they would have to get through that high school portion of the academy that's going to start in 11th and 12th grade. When they graduate from that, which would include summer programs and modeling behind teachers, they would then go to the University of the Virgin Islands. It costs about $5,000 in order to educate a child for a year at the University of the Virgin Islands in free tuition. I call that an investment, not an expenditure. And so by so doing, we would require them to serve 5 years at least into teaching in our school system. In addition to that, we want to put some emphasis on early education, which would be pre-K to 6th grade, and our goal would be to have all of our children reading on grade level. That is very important because our kids don't drop out in high school. They basically drop out in elementary school when they start to fall behind. So it is important that we look at education in terms of monies that are being spent there are not expenditures, but rather investments.
Quick follow-up here. How do we retain the teachers who are leaving?
One of the things that we have to, we will treat our teachers as Gold Star, with Gold Star standards. meaning you have to pay our teachers more. You have to create a better infrastructure in the elementary school, in the school system, period. I visited some of the schools, and in the same classroom that I went to visit, had some of the same chairs that I perhaps sat in when I was in school. And so there's no improvement being made in education whatsoever.
All right, Mr. Dawson.
Thank you. Teaching is the profession without which there are no other professions. Teachers should have an exalted place within our society and within our community. And I do believe that the University of the Virgin Islands has a very important role to play with educating our teachers. I know in years past, the teacher education program used to be a very robust program. It would appear as if it has somehow not gone by the wayside, but is not given a critical central role that it had been in the life of the university previously. So I think that we have to address UVI ramping up its efforts with regards to training teachers that we need to have locally. Now, we also have the opportunity with the decrease in student population that has been occurring actually for a number of years. I think we reached a high point probably in the 80s, but school enrollment is probably close to 1/2 of what it was from its high point. So we do have an opportunity, particularly with the ability to rebuild some of the schools, to build for maybe fewer schools, but better schools. And finally, we seem to have an academic focus, which is fine, but not everyone aspires to go to college. We really need to have a very vibrant vocational education, a career and technical education program here in the Virgin Islands, so that we can educate many of our young men and young women that are interested in the career technical fields. There is a great market for it, as we all know, in the aftermath of a hurricane if you're looking for a tradesperson.
Mr. Bryan.
The most important thing I want to talk about is actually being in the schools. As a junior achievement executive director, I spent a lot of time in our schools. I like to say hello to Miss Ernice over there in Eudora Ken and her Jobs for America's graduate program that allows so many students to excel by having somebody in school that actually advocates for the student. The big thing about education is that we simply have not prioritized it over the years. Number one, making sure that our teachers are paid and they are paid well for the jobs that they do. And as a condition of that payment, being able to eliminate teachers that don't perform and don't show the care and the interest in educating our kids. Number two, making sure that the facilities are there. When you go to these schools, it's impossible to learn in them. They're ceiling tiles hanging, they're unpainted, the bathrooms are filthy, they don't have toilet paper, the gyms are not properly swept and don't have the right equipment. You have to make them want to learn. Number three, technology, technology, technology. Kids live on their phone. If we don't have a curriculum that includes them with their phone and using other forms of whether Snapchat or Facebook or Instagram, incorporating in that learning, and then exposure, exposure, exposure. You don't know what you want to be unless you have the experience to go out there and to see somebody be an engineer, to see somebody work at WAPA, to see somebody work on the ferry, or to just be in contact with people who are doing different things in the Virgin Islands. We get in what we get out what we put in.
All right, thank you. I'm still struggling with the idea of not really getting any clear answers relative to how do we retain our teachers who are living by the droves, right?
Can I answer that?
Go ahead.
I think
I'll
one
give
of
everyone a chance.
the last piece of that was home ownership. I think if you get a home and you have a good job that pays you well, the incentive to stay in the Virgin Islands is higher. And for teachers, I think that I believe we should prioritize home ownership from the VI Housing Finance Authority by having a lotto once a year that not only allows teachers who are ready to build to get a free piece of land, or number two, to buy down the cost of homes by investing $50,000. You think $1 million will allow for 20 teachers every year to buy down the cost of a home by $50,000.
I'm going to go to everyone. Is this something you would do in your administration, you're saying?
Absolutely.
Mr. Petrus.
Yeah. Ernest, it goes beyond that. I think, our society, there's a lot of brokenness in our society, and there's a lot of hopelessness in our society. And it's not just teachers. We have a population shrinkage that has gone from perhaps 110,000 people. Now, if we have 95,000 people, I think we have a lot of people. And so it's a lot of pieces that need to come together in order to give people a sense of hope and make them want to feel like they're part of a community, part of something that is growing. And right now, people are living without hope.
Mr. Dawson?
Well, certainly we must pay our teachers better. Pay, I think, is at the heart of a lot of the dissatisfaction and the relocation of teachers to other places where they're getting better opportunities and better pay. But I've also heard teachers indicate that they are happy to deal and to struggle with the pay, but when they don't get the support from the administration that they need when they're assaulted by a student or even a parent, then we really have a societal issue. And we must give our teachers the support that they need and give them that exalted position within society that they used to occupy.
Okay, and so next question for you, Mr. Dawson.
Yes.
Let's stay right here on the issues. We're talking about healthcare now. A big problem in our territory. Some residents have actually left because of the situation of healthcare in our territory. Give me your plan for Dawson James team relative to healthcare in the territory, making the USVI a top-tier location as it relates to the health of people.
Well, certainly. And I view healthcare actually as being an economic opportunity as well. Because of where we're located in the world, in the Caribbean, a beautiful place, we could attract more retirees that would like to make this place their home, particularly the island of St. Croix that has such a beautiful terrain and has the landmass available. But we must address the healthcare issues because nobody is going to retire to a place where if they were to take ill, they're concerned about the healthcare that they're going to receive. So let's do it first for ourselves by ensuring that we have world-class medical facilities. And we tie that in with the University of the Virgin Islands. I happen to be an advocate of the medical school that the university is in the process of building. We know that it has run into some issues, but I was in a position to be able to assist UVI and the medical school in my former position in banking. And that ties in with technology, where we have VINGN that provides the broadband capacity that will make the simulation center here on St. Croix work. So it's all integrated. You have technological aspects, you have the healthcare aspect, and you have the economic aspect as well. And I will pursue all of those together with Maurice in a comprehensive manner to ensure that we're able to develop the economy with attracting people that would like to retire in the Virgin Islands while we provide adequate health care for our residents as well as our visitors.
Mr. Bryan.
Healthcare is more than just hospitals and systems of clinics. Healthcare starts with healthy living and training our people how to live better. For the last 60 years, we've been plagued with diabetes, hypertension, heart attacks, yet our government has not really made any serious commitment to changing that. This 10,000-step plan that was introduced by the government had a dramatic effect on getting people out to exercise, increasing our walkways and making sure that people stay active. Giving healthy habits early on in school by creating exercise programs that are part of the curriculum in elementary and making sure that kids exercise every day and play outdoors. The school lunch and the stuff that we eat, changing our habits about eating and how we feel about eating. And then finally, making sure that our healthcare dollars work. We spend $280 million a year between the government Cigna insurance and the two hospital budgets. We need to make sure that we're spending that money in a way that allows for better living for everyone. Why don't we have a system where we can incorporate the private sector to get basic care for a different type of plan? Maybe $40 or $50 a week where they can get emergent care and a good pharmacy plan that would allow for the development of business. As governor of the Virgin Islands, I want to do the things that I have to do, but I want to partner with the people that have the professionalism and the expertise in order to do them better. The big problem with our healthcare in the Virgin Islands is confidence in the system. If we can partner with a major player like Southern Methodist, Mayo, Cleveland, that will give people the confidence that their healthcare needs will be addressed here, we can keep that money and get the healthcare that Virgin Islanders deserve.
Thank you, Mr. Bryan. Mr. Petros?
Yeah, thank you for that question. Healthcare has been very important to me. As a matter of fact, it is one of the things that I worked on feverishly when I was in the legislature with my colleagues. We made a hospital semi-autonomous. It worked for a while until now. The hospital basically doesn't have enough revenues to operate. But one of the things that I see that is very lacking in the hospital is that there's an area that the hospital needs to work on in terms of its accounts receivable. There's a lot of money that's out on the street. The hospitals strongly rely on the government. But one of the things that Senator Sanis and I would do is try to engage in a partnership with one of the big labeled hospitals in the States that everyone goes to, such as Mayo Clinic, Cleveland Clinic. That's very important because right now we don't have the kind of equipment, the technology to be able to provide the service. The hospitals are not being properly funded, and so therefore, because of its importance, we have to basically get a healthy system whereby people have confidence in the system. By having confidence in the system means that we need to definitely partner with other people that have been doing this kind of work, and that where a lot of our people leave from here, go to the mainland to get services from these type of institutions. So we will definitely look to create a partnership with them.
So to be clear, your move to better healthcare in the territory would be to partner with outside organizations?
We definitely would need to do that.
All right. Let's talk about transparency, and let's talk about who here would commit tonight for a government that is transparent with the people's business, public documents, also the expenditures of the office of the governor. We've covered it quite often, and the situations with the current governor. Who here is committing tonight to a transparent government?
Well, that's an easy answer.
I think I get to
It was you, Brian. It's Brian.
No one is going to say, no, we don't want a transparent government. But I think what brings the transparency to the government is the access to technology and being able to bring those things online. Like the Office of Economic Opportunity during the Great Recession of the United States, we were able to have a website that showed all of the money coming in from the states, what projects those monies were dedicated to, and what percentage of the spending was being done. And if you follow the news, actually there was no audits or any audit findings about over $650 million that was given to the Virgin Islands that time because it was transparent. I'm individually, I am very frustrated because of the lack of information, especially now during this time of recovery, that we can't access reports. We're not getting good numbers from our Office of Budgeting, Finance. We're not getting a good idea of how much cash we have on hand. And the many myriad of reports that are being issued to the government on a daily basis are nowhere to be found. The governor's website is a mess. So for me personally, I think every citizen should have access to that information on a daily basis, just like it is in the Office of Accountability in the United States, where you can access the reports and you can see statistically what we need to tweak in order to make the government move forward, and the public feels at ease that the money is being spent in a way that's responsible and is doing the best for the people of the Virgin Islands.
So if Brian Roach team wins, transparency will be a top priority.
You will get sick of it. You will get so much information, you will be overwhelmed. I don't understand why it's a secret. Why are we keeping this information secret? At some point it would be exposed. Even when I was a commissioner of labor, I could not understand why the numbers that were being shared were somehow people were feeling were being deceptive. And when it was accessed, like the budget, we have the budget up every year, and a lot of people don't pull down the information. It's a very voluminous thing when you read the budget. I studied the budget every year and I look at it. It's available to every Virgin Islander, and all the other information will be available to every other Virgin Islander.
Mr. Petros?
Let me say on this, there's no sophisticated answer when it comes to someone who basically has total disregard for the system that we live in right now, and that I'm speaking about the governor. We should know, or the public should know, basically what you're spending on meals, what you're spending on living expenses, what are you spending on airfares, or in terms of different transportation. The public should know this because this is the public's money. And so transparency is very important to me. I have nothing to hide. A total open book, that will be the book that Senator Sanis and I will give to whoever needs it. And if we make a mistake, we will apologize and move on. But at no time will we hide public documents from public individuals, such as the media, who wants to feed the public and let the public know what is going on. At no time will we hide that information. And so that is the frustrating part right now, because right now, you don't even know what is being spent on living expenses for the governor, simply because everything is on lockdown. That should be public information because it is public funds. Basically, that's my answer to that.
Thank you, Mr. Petros. Mr. Dawson.
Well, I would like to thank Albert Bryan for that ringing endorsement that he just gave me a few moments ago, because when he speaks about the Office of Economic Opportunity and the transparency and the dashboard, the computer system that was put into place to ensure that the $650-odd million of American Recovery and Reinvestment Act grants that he referenced were properly shared with the public, I oversaw the Office of Economic Opportunity. And that was a very successful model. And that is precisely the model that I would bring as governor of the Virgin Islands to the entire Virgin Islands. I was very proud as Commissioner of Finance for us to have implemented the major modules of the Enterprise Resource Planning system of the government of the Virgin Islands, which provided comprehensive financial reporting on the government of the Virgin Islands and was one of the critical components of this government for the very first time in many years becoming current with the issuance of its audited financial statements. That is critical to transparency. And finally, water everywhere, no any drop to drink. Sometimes we have too much data and not enough information. I propose that we take the volume of data that is generated and produce a user-friendly report that could be consumed by your regular average citizen who would understand the status of their government, because they're key stakeholders in the government of the Virgin Islands.
All right, thank you. Next question starts with you, Mr. Petrus. Let's talk about crime in the territory. It has been a daunting problem for many administrations. We know, the territory has one of the highest crime rates per capita, and that, of course, is affecting a lot of different sectors. Tourism. What is your plan? Give us details of your plan to combat crime in the territory.
In addition, I know everyone wants to talk about crime from the standpoint in terms of stopping criminals. That is important. But I prefer to talk about the prevention side of it that we all miss the boat on. No one talks about how do we deal with these kids before they get to the stage where they're committing crime. How do we engage them? How do we educate them? How do we get them turned on to living, onto life? That they would see it difficult to take someone's life on the latter part. And it goes back to the saying of Frederick Douglass. It's easier to build strong children than to fix broken men. What we're talking about from a crime standpoint is how do we fix broken men, rather than how do we deal with these children on the front end to prevent them from going into the roads that they end up going into. Because if we don't deal with them on the front end from a prevention standpoint, none of us will sleep. None of us will be safe in our homes. And so whenever we talk about crime, we always talk about the incarceration part of it. There is a prevention part of it that is so important that we continue to miss the boat on and we never talk about. That is going to be the focus of the Petrosanis administration. Year-round athletics for our kids, focusing on helping our kids get turned on to education from an earlier standpoint, as opposed to dropping out of school later into the education and going into a life of crime. I know, that perhaps is not the answer you want to hear, but our focus is going to be on prevention. And
a quick follow-up, because we're running out of time. A quick follow-up. So for the current situation, we understand for the youth coming up, for the current situation, what would you do?
The morale of the police department is very low. It is very top heavy. You have the commissioner, you have the assistant commissioner, you have the deputy commissioner, then you have the territorial chief, then under the territorial chief you have 3 different layers of position. It is too top heavy and it is not functional in terms of not having a chief in St. Thomas, St. John, and St. Croix. You have a territorial chief, and so from the standpoint of crime, yes, we need to have more cameras. Yes, we need to put more money into technologies for the police officers. The police officers are getting raises right now, but there's a lot more to it in terms of making this, turning this around.
Thank you. Mr. Dawson?
Yes. Well, I believe in the carrot and stick approach. And on the stick side of that equation, we do need community-oriented policing. We need folks, police that, and I see some of it, but I think that we need more of it, police that get out of their car and walk a beat, get to know the neighborhood. I know that we had the housing police force that, for whatever reason, was disbanded many years ago, and I think that was a critical mistake. I also believe in a broken windows theory. That is, if you take care of the small infractions, You discourage the larger infractions. We allow too many minor violations to go unnoted, unpunished. We have noise ordinances, yet you can have people driving down the street and disturbing everybody's peace. And these are typically young people, and if they figure they can get away with those small things, then it grows and becomes larger things. But on the prevention end, the carrot end, we do have to provide alternatives for our young people. We need to have after-school programs. It's a shame when you can be driving by community centers, particularly in the summer. Community centers are closed. I was out canvassing with my team in the Kerwin Terrace community recently, and on a Saturday in summer, the center was closed. We have centers that haven't been opened for months, if not years. This is where we're losing the opportunity and the ability to prevent crime by working with our young people.
Mr. Brian?
I can't let it go without saying that I find it odd that the candidate Petrus is talking about prevention when for the last 10 years SANIS has just been advocating for and voting for and proposing stiffer sentences, harsher penalties for young men and young women who make mistakes in their life. I think for us to really address the problem, 80% of our prisoners have either a learning disability or some type of mental health issue. The first thing is identifying those things at an early age to keep them from ending up in jail because of frustration and not being able to find jobs in our community. Attacking our dropout rate. When I was at Labor, we instituted the Jobs for America's graduate plan because we realized that 400 students were going into 9th grade and only 240 were graduating from 12th grade. Some 40% were disappearing. We instituted YouthNet to try to form a net to find those students before they dropped out. The recidivism in the prison plan. The Virgin Islands has one of the highest incarceration rate, and most of the crime is being committed to people who are already been convicted, already been charged with crimes, and go on to continue more crimes in the community. Speeding up the way the court processes and making sure that everyone who goes to prison, if they don't have a high school diploma or skill, that they have an individual plan that would allow them to return to the society. Not treating prison as a punishment, but a rehabilitation, because these people are not going anywhere, they live in our community. And finally, using technology, the best of it, to make sure that we prevent crime and put the resources where we really need them.
Thank you, Mr. Byrne. I'm going to have one last follow-up before we go to closing statements here, and that's for you, Mr. Dawson. Very quickly, didn't get clear understanding as to your plan to combat the current crime situation we have in.
Well, you have to deal with it from both ends. You have to work on the prevention end with working with our youth. But with regards to the combating, we need to have boots on the ground. We need to have more police force, and we need for them to be more present physically in the communities as opposed to driving through. We need to have policemen that are walking beats, and we need to have more substations strategically placed throughout the islands.
Okay, and those things we're going to do quickly. That would be
absolutely.
Okay,
absolutely.
We're going to go to closing statements right now, 90 seconds, and we'll start with you, Mr. Petrus.
Okay, let me start with a closing statement by saying I think, Mr. Bryan, the blow to Senator SANIS was totally unnecessary and a mischaracterization as to what he stands for. As a matter of fact, there's no one like Senator SANIS when it comes to giving to this community from a nonprofit standpoint. So I think that was a total mischaracterization and deliberately done to get at Mr. SANIS. In terms of my candidacy and Senator SANIS, we offer ourselves as individuals and leaders who have done a lot in our community. Like I just mentioned, Senator SANIS himself does a lot of nonprofit work in our community to help all people of all walks of life. That is the same thing for myself. And so we present ourselves as a team that would best serve these Virgin Islands. We present ourselves as a team that would be able to challenge this administration, the Matt Potter administration, in the general election. We are best situated, best suited to deal with the Matt Potter candidacy, because we know what we have done in this community. The true measure of a leader is not what he says, but what he has done. And we have done a lot in our community. We ask for your vote. We ask for your support. We are number 3 on the primary ballot. It is today is so important for us to make the right decision, simply because Time is running out on the Virgin Islands, and we have to make the right decision in the Petros-Sanis team.
Thank you. Mr. Bryan.
Democrats, good evening again, and thank you for this wonderful opportunity to present myself and Tregenza Roach to you as your candidate, your Democratic gubernatorial candidate. This election and this selection process is about preparedness. It's about a team that started years ago doing the research that would be able to build a better Virgin Islands. It's about a team that decided to change course and knows that just doing anything better will not be effective. We have to change the way we think about business, the way we think about our solutions, and most importantly, we have to capitalize on all the opportunities that we have before us. This team has prepared and selected a running mate in Tregenza Roach that's had experience in law, in legislative action, in education, in journalism and in writing, somebody that cares and has shown their support for Virgin Islanders throughout these years. He accompanies me on this trek as I bring the experience of actually having managed a government department with 8 years of experience on the Port Authority Board, as head of the Government Development Bank, as head of the Economic Development Authority Board. This is the experience and the preparedness that we will bring to you, a preparedness that will anticipate the downturns in the economies, that would allow us to be able to prepare for hurricanes and natural disasters, that will prepare our children for a true 21st century education, where they can be educated to compete in a global market. We want you to change course now, so help us build the Virgin Islands for all of us. Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, thank you very much for this opportunity, Ernice and WTJX, the Consortium. I would first like to challenge the other two candidates here to at least 2 more debates over the next 2 weeks, giving the opportunity to our citizens and residents, voters in St. Thomas and St. John, the opportunity to interact with us personally in a forum similar to this as well. We essentially have spent an hour here tonight with very good discussions. But I think that the people of the Virgin Islands deserve more than an hour from us in terms of seeing us side by side to be able to make their decisions. The previous speaker spoke about their experience. If you were to poll the people of the Virgin Islands, they will tell you that the number 1 and number 2 issues on their minds are the economy and government fiscal matters. I'm a career banker with 30 years of experience in both the public sector and the private sector, and a record of accomplishment in both. In addition to being the Commissioner of Finance, I was the Executive Director of the Public Finance Authority, the Chairman of the Board of Tax Review, the Chairman of the Lottery Commission, and there were significant improvements in all of those agencies under my tenure. Attorney Maurice James is well situated to run effectively the Board of the Lieutenant Governor's Office and the Banking and Insurance. And that too is a critical area. We are well suited to be the next governor and lieutenant governor of the Virgin Islands under the Democratic banner, and we ask for your support of team number 1 on August 4th. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Mr. Petros, Mr. Bryan, Mr. Dawson, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you for staying with us throughout our Democratic Forum. We hope you leave with a better understanding of each team and you are better prepared to make an informed decision on primary election day, of course, which is Saturday, August 4th. Remember to get out and vote. I'm Ernice Gilbert. Thanks for joining us.